When I was in elementary school and middle school and high school, I dreaded the school bell. And it wasn't the bell that told me that there was class starting or the bell that told me that the day was ending. It was the bell that told me that it was time for recess, because I hated to speak with other kids. It made me feel very uncomfortable. I felt very anxious. And I felt a lot of pressure to talk about girls like they were objects and to make fun of other kids. And I didn't like to do it. I lived in a very macho society in Venezuela. And so I wanted just to be invisible and to not talk to anybody. And so in trying to avoid people, when I went to college, I studied chemical engineering and finance. And when I went to grad school, I went to get an MBA that kept me in my comfort zone of numbers and facts and logic. But when I got to grad school, the most popular class there was a class called Interpersonal Dynamics that people called touchy-feely. And I signed up for it to learn something new. And in that class, I learned something really useful that I had never heard before, which is that emotions are useful and we can use emotions to communicate with each other. That was a new idea to me. And we had a practicum where once a week, a subgroup of 12 students got together in the classroom and we formed a circle that was called a T group. And we were just supposed to talk to each other and to share vulnerably and to use emotions in our communications. And so there was a lot of crying in this class because people would share things they usually didn't share. And so the person sharing was crying and the people listening were crying. And I very seldom cried because I was not an emotional person. But I was very engaged in listening attentively. And I was really interested in this idea that all these high achievers that looked so put together, they had baggage, just like I had baggage. And one day, my classmate who was sitting next to me, Julian, turned to me and said, "Eduardo, I don't understand something about you. I remember one time you told me that you and your wife, Allison, decided not to have children. Doesn't that make you sad?" And I was like, "Well, Julian, Allison and I thought this through really a lot. And we thought about pros and cons. And we realized that there's drawbacks to not having kids. And we're not going to experience being parents. But then we'll get to do other things. And we are confident that this is the right decision for us." And he said, "Yeah, but doesn't that make you feel sad?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm sad that I won't get to experience being a parent. But I'm happy that I'll get to do other things." And he said, "No, you don't get it. You'll never have your newborn in your arms and feel her weight and look at her eyes and feel her heartbeat and the warmth of her skin against yours. Doesn't that make you feel sad?" And for a moment, I could feel this moment that I would never get to experience. And this very vivid tingling in the tip of my toes started and shot up my body. And once it got to the top of my head, I just had an explosion of emotion. I started bawling and just crying, and I couldn't stop. It was uncontrollable. And it wasn't that I was changing my mind about our decision. It was just that I really could feel this moment that I would never get to experience. And what was really amazing is that from that moment on, in every other session we had, no matter what anybody shared, I would be bawling. And even outside of the class for months, I would be bawling all the time. I didn't used to cry when I watched movies, but when Alice and I would watch sitcoms, I would be bawling. And a few months later, when this was going on, something really sad happened, which is our dog, Jake, died. And Jake was my first dog that was ever part of my family. He was 16 years old. He grew up with Allison. He was our child. And I was bawling. And one day I was talking to my parents on the phone, and I was telling them that Jake died, and I was bawling. And they got really uncomfortable. They said, "I understand this is really sad, but you can't react like this. You have to control yourself." And I got really mad. I was like, "No, you don't understand. Emotions are useful, and I have to feel them, and I have to express them." And I realized, wait a second. My whole life, when I was feeling all this pressure to talk about girls as objects and to make fun of other people, I was also getting a message that boys don't cry and that men are not supposed to feel emotions like sadness or sorrow. And I had bubbled up all these emotions and pressure cooked them inside of me. And now it was coming out as a floodgate tsunami. And that was healing. Thank you.